And welcome to episode 13 of the Retro Critical Podcast. Have a nice selection of topics for you. In this episode, we're going to talk about Bethesda and their policy on review copies. I'm going to give you some thoughts about the Nintendo Switch and its potential price. And in a short retro segment, I'm going to talk about trying to sell my retro game collection, how that's been going, what my experiences were. I've got a very personal this month in gaming, looking back on November of 2007, which I know doesn't seem like a terribly retro date, but a very, very important month for me. And I'm going to end the episode talking about how this will actually be one of the last episodes of the Retro Critical Podcast. I'll explain all of that towards the end. So here we go. So it came out that Bethesda is changing its policy on offering review copies of games. And this story's been going around now for a while, and I think a lot of commentators on YouTube, a lot of sort of prominent game reviewers and critics have had something to say about this, so I won't dwell on it. It's only to say that I think it represents this broader shift in the video game landscape about which I've spoken for a number of episodes. I've said repeatedly that game developers and game publishers are making a very concerted effort to control how and for how long you enjoy the game. It's not about providing you with a great product, which you can sort of play at your leisure. It's really structuring and monetizing the time that you devote to a game. And this is all part of that. I think for, I don't know how many years since the first issue of EGM, and possibly before, there has been a long-standing culture among video game players where you look at reviews first before you buy a game. It's impossible to afford every single game that comes out. You want some sort of quasi-objective assessment of a game's quality, and you want to get that from someone who has played a broad range of games, a reviewer who does this for a living. Now, that model has always been somewhat problematic. There's always been a rather tenuous editorial objectivity between between the video game magazines and the publishers and developers, and now the kind of YouTube personalities and websites, but nonetheless, it was still a useful model in the sense that, now I can click onto a YouTube channel, I can watch footage of the game, I can get the opinion of a super fan, and I can do that ahead of time and make my decision. And if a game is egregiously bad, take something like Arkham Knight, I can avoid it until it's in a better state. So there was still kind of a pro-consumer element to that, regardless of to what degree the reviewers were often compromised. Now, Bethesda said that they did this so that all players get to experience the game at the same time in the same ways. And as a lot of people have pointed out, including Total Biscuit, that is a bullshit excuse. Total Biscuit's point, which I think is a good one, is that it's playing on the jealousies of immature players who have always hated the fact that some people got the games before others. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's true. But again, this is a new era in video games. And that era is one in which you're no longer, I think, paying for a game, but you're renting an experience. And I'm not the first to make that point, obviously. These games, the more they become integrated online, the less control you have over them. Again, you are no longer in control of your investment of time into the game. To say nothing of the microtransactions and microeconomies, which force you to cough up more money to enjoy the game in perhaps the way that you intend to enjoy it. And this is part of that. If you're renting an experience, the question of quality becomes secondary. The experience is, hey, the whole community is playing this game at this time, and I want to be part of that. And yeah, there might be problems, and I can bitch about the problems, but that's still part of the experience. And if it's great, wonderful. I mean, that's what Twitch has become. I mean, you only ever see a certain handful of popular games on Twitch, and then they sort of fall out of fashion. Only games that sort of that sort of make it back into the top 12 or something, or the fighting games if there's a tournament or something like that. So this is a very anti-consumer era, and I think it's curious that Bethesda does this, because I think they're a company that has not been hurt by their numerous technical shortcomings with Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series. I think a lot of us have an understanding that these worlds, they're so broad in scope, they're so involving, that there are going to be crazy moments of clipping or players floating, or bugs that, while not completely game-breaking in most instances, lead to strange and sometimes unwanted occurrences in the game world. And I would say that players and reviewers have been very kind in that regard. No one's saying, no one said don't play Fallout, whatever it was, Fallout 4, the new Fallout game, because of these issues. I think everyone said this is a great game that nonetheless carry some of the issues that come along with this engine that they use. So, since they weren't being heard, I just find it strange that they would pursue this policy. But it's also understandable from a business perspective, I guess, because when the news is really bad, like in Arkham Knight, and people are saying, hey, this is a complete piece of garbage, you are driving away people from the product, and rightfully so. The same thing with No Man's Sky, I guess. I didn't follow all of the reviews, but I believe some of the earlier ones, while not sort of criticizing the game too much, said, oh, this is not what it was advertised to be, which of course is a pretty strong statement in and of itself, and I'm sure that drove sales away from that game. I think it would be incredibly unacceptable if this happened in other fields. I mean, if you're buying a car and there are no car reviews, until 6 months after a car is released, how do you know that this particular car is a piece of junk? Consumer Reports has always been ahead of the pack in that regard. And so, for example, they came out with, they said, what's the worst car in America? They rated some Cadillac SUV a 0 because within the first year, many owners were reporting needing 2 transmission replacements. Now, if that sort of information were to have been suppressed, you could have, I don't know how many people buying these cars and having these major mechanical issues. So I don't think, and I don't think in any other field, I don't think you would accept this, although I guess companies are trying to eliminate dissent as best they can, but in the video game industry it seems to be more potent. And if this is successful, and I have no doubt that it probably will be, I think it's an issue that reviewers care about. I'm not sure that the average player or the super fan necessarily cares about. We're going to see it with most games, and then we will, in fact, have a future in which objective assessments of game quality are no longer necessary. It's simply, hey, here's a game, here's an experience, you've been hyped about it, you know what it's going to be about, buy in. Just buy in. And it might get better, it might get worse, it might meet your expectations, it might not, but you will have paid for the experience and got what you paid for. And at that point, me personally, I mentioned this a few episodes ago, this is going to move me into kind of a different realm as a gamer. So I'm not, going to be the gamer that I was, buying everything and trying to get every release. I'll simply treat it as I treat sporting events, which is to say that I typically don't care unless there's something really special or that speaks to me. Perfect example is, and by the time you listen to this, the World Series will have been decided, but this World Series was a historic World Series. The Cubs, for the first time since 1945, were playing in a World Series. So even me, as not someone who really cares too much about baseball, I said, I've got to watch this. I've got to at least watch some of these games. And I'm sure there will be games, video games for me that play that same role. I'll disconnect for a while if I have no means of figuring out whether a game is good or bad. I'm not really going to care about it or buy it until it is severely discounted or, something that I'm deeply invested in. So the last game that I have purchased is Forza 3. You've heard me, Forza Horizon 3. You've heard me talking about that. And the next game that I can definitively say, I will buy this. This is a day one purchase, is Yakuza 0. And that's not coming out until February. Again, I think that's a shame, but as a consumer and as someone who doesn't have the time or the patience to purchase a bad game and suffer through it anymore, I'm kind of getting to that point. Not because I don't like video games or because I'm doing this kind of strict accounting of my time and cost-benefit analysis and what am I devoting my time to and all of that. It's simply that I've played video games now. I've been an active video game consumer, buying games with my own money, coming up on 20 years. From the first time I ever got a part-time job and could buy these things myself. Obviously, I've been getting games for much longer than that. So after 20 years and seeing this consistent decline in quality and respect for the player, now not having any way of even watching a YouTube video and muting the dumbass personality presenting the game and just looking at what the game is about, it's going to force me to check out. So Nintendo President Tatsumi Kimishima came out and dropped a little hint about the Nintendo Switch pricing. He said, and this is a quote, "Regarding the price, as we have been saying, we are in principle not planning to sell it at a loss. We would like a wide variety of consumers to enjoy Nintendo products, and we would also like to think in terms of consumers' expectation for our products," end quote. Now, I've heard a lot of people take this, or at least places that I've read, kind of the discussions on Reddit and whatnot. People are saying, well, this is a clear indication that this is going to be a lower-priced console. They want people to enjoy, as many people as possible to enjoy the products. I'm not really convinced by that. I think Nintendo's probably going to keep this in line with what the Wii U was. I would expect them to have a number of bundles. Maybe the kind of baseline bundle will be in the neighborhood of $299. I know some people are saying that this, it needs to be below $299. It needs to be $250 or $200 so they can really sell this alongside of the Scorpio and whatever the new PlayStation Pro is. And I kind of think that they're doing that already at the Wii U price point, which I think is what now, $299 now. I know when I bought it, it was, because I didn't get the black one, I got the white one. I want to say I paid $299 for that too, or $349. So I think they're going to stick around that range. I could see them doing a lot of tiered bundles, system with no game, or some sort of download voucher for a couple of Nintendo eShop games, and then moving up to something with one launch game. And I would imagine that the top tier Nintendo Switch would be the Zelda. And I honestly think $399 is what they're going to go for. I think they're going to make the argument that this is a new, unique piece of software, piece of hardware, even though, of course, we know that this is powered by a Tegra chip that's a few years old. So I think they're going to try to make some money on this. I think that all of the conversation that I've seen about it being sub $299 is, quite frankly, nonsense. I think video games are a hot field, and I think Nintendo knows that they can make money in this space, and I believe that the lack of popularity of the Wii U, even amongst people who really like the games, I think Nintendo is going to push the fact that all of those criticisms have been taken into account and corrected, and they're going to say, hey, this is what the Wii U should have been. And I think they know that the Nintendo fans will pony up the cash at $399. I think they could go as high as $429, $449. I know people are going to say that's crazy, and I don't think they're going to go there. But I think they could, for their top line bundle. I know for me, I am going to buy it. I'm not going to wait in line for it. I'm not going to go through pre-order insanity. But if on March, whenever, it's March 15th or whenever the case, whatever the day is, I can plop down $350 and get the system with Zelda, I will do it. And I haven't been purchasing a lot of video games of late, but just the goodwill and the connection that Nintendo has to my gaming past is sufficient for me to pay that price. So I do it at $449. Yeah, I probably would. I'd love it to be $199, but I don't think it's going to go there. But it's going to be an interesting couple of months ahead. I'm looking forward to the January announcement. I am, as you heard from the last episode, kind of negative on not the system, but on how much this can sort of change Nintendo's fortunes. I mean, I hope it does. I'm rooting for it, and I'll buy it. But again, I think the usage scenarios that they presented in that little 3-minute commercial don't necessarily correspond to how a lot of people are going to play this. But again, I think I just want to sit on the couch and play Zelda. But hey, if they do something unique and innovative, and there's an ecosystem here with a different type of handheld game, maybe priced a little bit differently, not the sort of freemium bullshit that you get on cell phones, but yeah, I think that maybe they can carve out a new market somehow with some sort of new handhelds gaming model and ecosystem. Then there's a chance, but yeah, I will be there in March.
Rated T14.
A TNA game? You want some of this?
Bring it.
All the moves, all the wrestlers, all the action that only TNA Impact can provide.
We'll take it. Yeah.
TNA Impact, as seen on Spike. Wrestling so real, you feel pain.
All right, I want to follow up on a story I did a couple episodes ago where I talked about starting to sell my collection, or at least putting together a massive bundle, and I just want to update you guys on how that went. It did not sell, and like I said, I was fine with that. This wasn't a distress situation. This was kind of testing the market. So if you looked on eBay, and I did a video, I think I posted the links to the eBay listing. I set it at the highest price I could set it at $5,000, and I said, look, this is not what I expect to get. This is a buy it now, make me an offer. And the one offer I got, I shouldn't say the one offer I got, the one serious offer I got was $1,600, which was way too low for what I was selling. Now, of course, people said, $600, $500, $400, obviously. That is not worth the response. On Craigslist, did a little better. One guy offered me $2,000, and of course I was going to negotiate with him a little bit, but he just stopped responding. And of course, Craigslist, you never know what you're going to get until you show up at the meeting. And even then, it is uncertain what is going to happen. So I took it to, well, I didn't take it to a store. I sent the listing to a local store, and I said, look, I have dealt with you guys before. I think you've given me some fair prices on some games, so this is what I'm putting out there. Why don't you guys take a crack at it? And it was so funny because they said, oh, this is an amazing collection. We want to work with you, but you have to understand, we're a business, and we can't pay you a lot because we need to stay afloat. And I said, well, I don't know, until we have some hard numbers, I don't know what your definition of a lot is. And I didn't give him a price. I just said, hey, this is out there. You guys want to make an offer on some of it or all of it? Let me know. So I said, look, take the top 5 most valuable games in that lot and make me an offer on them. And just so we can calibrate our expectations as to, well, you said you can't pay me a lot, and you think I'm asking for, the sort of implication there was that I was going to ask for the moon, which I wasn't. So I said, let's calibrate our expectations, see where it goes. And they stopped responding. So I think they probably didn't want me to have any idea of what the prices could be. They were going to offer me $500. Whatever. They want to stay in business. That's fine. A lot of nasty emails on Craigslist, sort of, bickering as to sort of why I was putting it on there. And I said, look, it is what it is. Leave me alone. And then a couple of guys were sort of, I guess, suspicious that I didn't list a price. And I said, in the listing, and you can, well, actually that listing is down, but if you went to the listing, you would have seen that it was an extremely thorough and detailed listing, accounting for every game, conditions. And I put in the listing, and this is why I suspect no one actually read it. There was a block of text that you had to read, and I know that's not popular these days. But I said I wasn't going to. I said I'm targeting this at a collector, and a collector is going to look at this, and they're either going to price it out themselves, or they're going to have a general idea. And I said I'm open to offers. I'm not going to tell you that I want 4,000 or 10,000 or 2,000. Try to give me an offer and I'll see. You know, I'm not in the position where I need to get rid of this stuff. And strangely, no one understood. No one seemed to kind of grasp that. And I would tell them in the email, they'd say, well, how much? How much? I said, look, you know, I don't have a price in mind. I said, I've listed it for $5,000 on eBay. I don't expect to get $5,000. So I'm looking for, you know, a fair, serious offer from a serious collector. So that should tell them. I said, I do not want $5,000 for this. So at that point, you know, if you were serious, you'd say, okay, well, you know, let me offer him $1,500 or let me offer him $2,500. And a lot of people just were not either comfortable with that or they thought I was fucking with them in some way. And I wasn't. I mean, if you look at my selling history on eBay, and of course I haven't sold a lot of video games, but other stuff, you know, I'm very consistent, you know, 100% type of person. I make sure every transaction goes well. So they couldn't get that. And then, of course, you had people who didn't even read it and said, oh, I want to buy Power Stone 2. And I said, look, it's not, you know, that's not the sale. You know, a couple of, I think, younger people who just were mad that I wouldn't sell them the 2 or 3 games that they wanted. So I said, okay, well, you know, let me break this up into smaller lots, and I put the Dreamcast games up and the Genesis games and stuff like that. And of course, you know, they're not. Of course, we got a couple of offers, but again, a lot of lowball, and I don't mean insulting lowball offers, but I mean if you look at Power Stone 2. Power Stone and what was it, Project Justice. So I listed that, and you know, on Craigslist I said, look, I want $300, which is high, but that's how Craigslist operates as far as, you know, in my experience. You know, someone lists something high, you know, you come to a deal, and people were saying, oh, 100, 150, and you know, hey. Go on to eBay Solds, go on to price charting, and just add up these 3 games. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And when you would call people out, or at least I called people out, and in a friendly way, I said, you know, look, you need to go to these sources and look at the price. And if you're serious about it, you know, I'll entertain a serious offer. So I think there's a couple of things going on. And again, I'm on the East Coast. It may be different on the West Coast. It may be different in places like Seattle, where the retro gaming culture I think is a little more developed, but I do believe that the market has not really matured in a kind of into a kind of real collector's market. And I think I mentioned this in another episode. I'll mention it again. You know, having tracked baseball cards and coins by virtue of having my best friend who's a big time baseball card collector, my father who is a coin collector, and having seen those types of shows and environments, and having bought items in both settings myself, you know, there's a real kind of professional, serious bent to those kind of collectors. And so when you come up with a lot of good stuff, of verifiable, collectible, rare items, no one questions the fact that you're doing it. And I got, you know, video games, everyone, why are you doing a lot? Why are there all these games? And I don't think people are recognizing, even as I broke it down into smaller lots, it doesn't seem like the video game collector in this area of the country, at least, understands the kind of value added to the games by just sourcing them and putting them together, you know, 3 desirable games. And look, you're going to hunt down Power Stone 1, 2, and Project Justice alone. You're probably going to pay in the neighborhood of $300, maybe more on eBay as time goes on, and people try to cover the 13% or whatever you have to pay to sell things on eBay. So I think there's value in having those 3 games available in your area in good condition. And I got a lot of resentment for that, for putting the stuff together and asking a fair price. I would say to these people, yeah, I listed at $300, you know, again, make me a serious offer. And no one could do that. It also proves that video games are not a liquid item. And in coin collecting, for example, if you buy a rare coin, and again, it's going to be different. There's such a huge hobby. But if you take a super desirable coin made out of silver or gold, and you'll pay a premium for its collector's value and whatever, you can take that coin and move it and make money immediately. Of course, gold and silver are precious metals. They have a spot price, but you're even going to get a certain percentage of the collector's premium that you paid. In many cases, I've seen and I've experienced in kind of following that hobby from the sidelines, but nonetheless, being at these shows and stuff like that, you're gonna make a little bit of money, and you'll get something above the premium that you paid if you hold on to these things for long enough. Baseball cards, same way. My friend, when he gets duplicates, or when he's such a huge collector that he's got graded stuff. He's bought, triples and quadruples of some 1956 Topps card or something like that. And when he puts that stuff on eBay, when he takes that stuff to a show, it sells instantly because people know. And he always gives a fair price. He knows the book value and all the rest of it. But now, baseball cards, I'm not saying, if you've got some sort of refractor card from the 2000s, yeah, that's not going to sell. But I mean, the proven rock-solid collectible items in the hobby will sell very quickly. And I've learned that, there's really not a lot of outlets to do that as a collector. Now, there was a guy who offered me an incredible price on some of the Genesis games that I was selling. And I was like, oh man, I looked at what I paid for them, and I said, I got to do this. So yeah, let's go. Let's meet up. I was going to make a killing on this. But of course, Craigslist, he can never find a time, and then he stopped emailing. So for all the chances that you can have at really making a killing on a game, and maybe you time the market. Like I found out that Mana Chemia 2, some crafting RPG that I picked up on Amazon for like $9. So I checked my sort of shopping history on Amazon. Was going for $75 unopened. So okay, that's a great deal. Doesn't mean I can move it. And I think eBay, of course, you're going to get a bigger audience on eBay, and you will sell some of this stuff on eBay. But of course, the fee structure on eBay is to the point where that cuts so much into your profit that to me, it's not really the place you want to go. I think probably what I'll wind up doing is finding some convention local to me and buying a table and taking this stuff there and trying to sell it that way. Because I think I've got enough quality stuff that, even if I have to recover $150 for the table fee, I think I'll be able to do it. But I would caution people to assume, for those people who assume that, they have a kind of a liquid item, a sellable asset. It's not that liquid. On the other hand, though, I do still disagree with people who are saying, well, video games, you got to buy them. It's not you shouldn't buy it for an investment. You shouldn't buy it, it's just a hobby. And at the end of the day, as much as I love video games, this is an asset. This is an investment. It wasn't purchased as an investment, but when you go to sell it, you are entering a marketplace that plays by the rules of other marketplaces. It may not be as refined, it may not be as mature, but it is an asset, and I think because it's an asset, there should be a way to sell these things in a little bit more professional manner, whether you want to or not. Now, granted, if you have a super rare thing, yeah, you can auction it off. I mean, people have sold big things on eBay, but just like I said, the fee structure on eBay is crazy. The reliability of Craigslist isn't there. Game Gavel has more or less fallen apart, as far as I know, or at least it wasn't on the upswing that it was a couple of years ago. And I think that guy from Buffalo listed his whole collection on there. Price charting, marketplace, I don't really know too much about that. And I don't know, like I said, I'm hoping that the collecting scene at like a smaller show or something like that might be the way to go. And if I do that, I'll report back on it. But yeah, it's been very interesting having this stuff up there, and like I said, I'll take it down and hey, try again in the future or not. Maybe I'll actually open some of these games and play them if the mood hits me. Now we're going to do This Month in Gaming for November 2007. And you might say that that is not a very retro date, but of late I've kind of gone back to the sort of mid to late 2000s, and I'm starting to develop a nostalgia for this time. In fact, I think I talked a little bit about this on the first episode of the podcast, but I wanted to find a month, kind of a more recent month, that was really special to me, and November of 2007 was, on a lot of levels, a really great time to be a gamer. Personally, I had moved into my first house, and I was in grad school. I know those two things don't usually go together, but it worked out. I was in a place that was pretty cheap to live, and this house was not really right near the school, but close enough to drive, and it was in a fairly decent area. So I had my first place, really, or my first house, and all the stuff that went along with that. And one of the things I said I was going to do when I got my first place was I was going to get a huge TV. Of course, HD TV, I didn't have one, so I was going to get the huge HD TV and a PlayStation 3. And so I did that in the summer. I got, I think I talked about it here on the show. At some point, I got the Samsung 50-inch LED DLP television and a PlayStation 3, and I was thrilled. Like, this was one of the coolest times for me in gaming. And, it was, the summer was a little kind of barren as far as games. When I got the first, I'm going to blank, but that first early post-apocalyptic racing game on the PlayStation 3. Of course, I can't recall it now, but I'm sure you know which one that was. I got Virtua Tennis 3, which I really liked. And I believe I got one of the baseball games. Maybe the first, what was it, MLB The Show baseball game. But that was about it. And I was waiting for the fall because I knew a number of incredible games were coming out. And believe it or not, the game that I was most looking forward to was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. Now, I know that sounds crazy today, but that game had a lot of hype surrounding it. Up to that point, it had only been a World War II game, and that had never interested me, and just seeing the incredible trailers, and it was still a time where getting the PC quality shooter on a home console was not always a given. I mean, the Xbox did it to a degree, but I was so pumped for that game, and it came out on November 5th. I got it on November 5th, and I played the hell out of it. I mean, I had the surround sound system going. It was just so visceral, and just sitting there in my living room or in my TV room with the brand new television, the PS3, and this awesome new game that we were looking forward to for such a long time. It was incredible. Now, it was a short game, and I sort of played through it, at least the single player, probably within a weekend. But that didn't matter. And of course, at that time, PSN was free, so I played the game online. And of course, in those days, the online play was not at the level it is today, so I didn't get instantly killed, and was actually, not competitive, but I could at least survive and engage in the game. So that was amazing. But don't forget, this was also, and I love these periods in gaming, where you had this awesome, extremely hyped, and actually extremely good, I really still like that, first modern Call of Duty game. So you had that stuff coming out, but you also had some PS2 games coming out. And the game that I was so excited for, I reviewed it on the channel, was Fire Pro Wrestling Returns. Came out on November 13th, and I either got it from Amazon or I went and picked it up at a GameStop and played the hell out of that game. And so, I had my PS2 also hooked up to this television, and totally different experiences, but that game is one of my favorite games of all time. It's, I can sit down with that and play that game and relive so many different eras of wrestling. And it was also during that time that I discovered the Fire Pro Wrestling forums. I honestly forget what they're called now. I haven't been there in such a long time. But because I had the PS3, they had a way of doing sort of creator wrestler transfers. If you didn't have a PS3, you had to get a Game Shark. They're still making Game Sharks, and it was this incredibly irritating multi-step process. But if you had a PlayStation 3, which of course those early PS3s had PlayStation 2 compatibility, you could actually take an image of a game save or a PS2 memory card with the Fire Pro game saves, put it on the PS3, and then sort of re-download it to another card, and you can get all of these rosters. So I had a wrestling game of 800 wrestlers from, perfectly programmed, because they'd all been done. A lot of them had been done in Japan initially, and then there were a lot of guys doing it here and doing just these fabulous created wrestlers. So that occupied so much time. And it was kind of fun to know that I didn't have to give up the PS2, yet I was experiencing PlayStation 3 in all of its glory. Now, at the same time, I had gotten my hands on some other games for both platforms that I was just utterly enthralled with. One of them was the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which I think came out in the spring, but I didn't have the house, the TV, or the PlayStation 3 then. So I waited, and I got it either around the same time I got Call of Duty or slightly earlier. And so once I had finished Call of Duty, I was playing Oblivion. And I've talked about that so many times. That probably was the last game that I was consumed with, where I just lived to play that game. And it felt so, next gen. It was probably the last, truly next gen experience where I was playing this, and I was experiencing something that just simply didn't exist on any other platform. And at that time, I didn't have a gaming computer that could really deal with that. So for me, this felt like the next generation. I spent hundreds of hours playing. So you might say, well, what was I doing in grad school? But it was funny. I had moved. I was in a different state. I was completely away from friends and family. And grad school, I was teaching. I was obviously... I wasn't teaching in the fall of 2007. I was doing all my classwork, and, I think I had a situation where it was like, I'd had classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so I had Tuesday and Thursday off, and then, of course, the weekends to myself. And I didn't really click with a lot of the other students. Of course, as grad students, there's not that sort of like go out and party and kind of social atmosphere. A lot of my fellow students were from overseas, and some of the ladies had kids and stuff like that. So it wasn't a sort of atmosphere where socializing every weekend or every free moment was really expected or necessary. So I found myself, away from the university in this house, and I could do whatever I wanted for the first time in my life, and I could game for however long I wanted. And just to kind of have the Call of Duty and to play then Oblivion and to sink into this world, and then put in the wrestling game, and just it was just so nostalgic to play that Fire Pro Wrestling game and to go between the two. And I was just in this like blissful state of gaming. I might, again, it sounds sad, I'm just this lonely guy in a house all by himself, and so I would, I would do my schoolwork, I would write, I would do all the assignments, and I get that done, and then I would kind of focus in on gaming. And I just remember those, Friday nights. Of course, I think on Fridays, the class was like, I only had one class, and it was maybe 10 in the morning, and then afterwards I go to the library a little bit, I get my stuff done, and, I just, that drive home, and I get a pizza, I get a couple beers, and I would just sit there in that TV room, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. A couple of other games came out. Another game that I kind of got late on, I guess, was Persona 3. And I know that came out, again, this is a little bit later. It came out in 2008. I want to say earlier. This is 2007, so I wasn't playing Persona 3, Persona 3 in 2007 because it came out in 2008. But that was a game that I was also sort of kind of in this little bubble of gaming pleasure. But yeah, so that was a different fall. But let's look at some of these other games that came out. Of course, the big one was Mario Galaxy, and I didn't have a Wii at this time, but a ton of excitement with that game. Had a couple of other, just games that from that era, I don't know. I mean, you had things like Kane and Lynch, which was not a good game, but it just brings me back to that time. Sonic 2 Rivals came out. Again, not a great game, but one that sort of takes me back to that period. Now, two games that I did play. One, Buddy got for me, SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, and, those games aren't great, but yeah, I still wasn't totally turned off to wrestling at that point. And actually, it was funny. I mean, that was the time when, like, TNA had gotten, I think, Kurt Angle and Sting, or maybe that was 2006. But, I don't know, there was something about TNA, like I would watch TNA on those Thursday nights, and even though TNA wasn't a great wrestling promotion, I don't know, there was something about, I just associate about, like, watching TNA in that, what my first game room, essentially, at that time period. But, I still was kind of into WWE a little bit. So that was fun. Another game that I picked up and really enjoyed was Sega Rally Revo. And Sega Rally Revo is a game that I think gets knocked for being just essentially kind of like a water slide of a racing game. You just press accelerate, you could bounce off things. But I don't know, it just captured a lot of those great Sega arcade racers, and it wasn't maybe as good as Sega Rally 2 to the purists, but I don't know, it looked great for the time, and I enjoyed playing it. What else came out? You had Mass Effect. You had, sort of missing this here. You had Dragon Quest. You had Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, which Obviously, it's funny. I did have a GameCube, but that game wasn't on my radar, and of course, I could kick myself for that. Unreal Tournament 3. Unreal Tournament was another PlayStation game. Well, I have to check this because something tells me. Where was the PlayStation? Now the PlayStation 3 version came out in actually a little bit later in December. Because I was going to say that was a game that I played a lot in this period, but obviously wasn't from November. Great game. The first Mass Effect came out, and I think that was exclusive to the Xbox, as was Geometry Wars Galaxy. I probably picked that up a little bit later, although that came out for the DS at that point. But yeah, just think about Mass Effect being new, but I remember being thrilled kind of seeing that and kicking myself, oh, why didn't I have a Xbox 360? And then something silly like, Puzzle Quest, which it's funny, I've never played Puzzle Quest, but I don't know, it just sort of fit in to this time period. Contra 4 for the Nintendo DS was a game that excited me at this point. You had also PSP games coming out like Metal Gear Solid, the Portable Ops. What else came out as I'm sort of scrolling through the PSP list? The SOCOM Navy SEALs game. I mean, I know people are excited about that. You had Silent Hill Origins. So, just a lot of stuff going on in gaming at this period. Whether it was on the PS3, on the Xbox 360, or the legacy platforms at this time. And, for me, to me, that time, was just the epitome of being young. It was just the epitome of being a young guy in my 20s, independent, able to create, I guess, my own kind of domestic bliss, which for me was just having, a fridge with junk food and beer and the big TV and all the video games. And it's funny because I miss that, and I still live alone. Although, I've said many times, I do have a girlfriend and all of that. But of course, I have now serious professional responsibilities, and it's cost me a lot more money to live alone now, where I am in the country versus being kind of down south and in this, just incredibly affordable situation. So, I don't know, I think that time period in your 20s, when you're first on your own is special. Maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know. Like, I've known some girls who couldn't live alone, and it really bothered them to be alone, and even some guys for that matter. But when you're out, when you have that time to yourself, it's just such a a precious thing, and to have, I think 2007, fall of 2007 generally, not just November, is a great time for gaming. And, a foundation for a lot of franchises that now we kind of feel like are a little repetitive, like Call of Duty, like Mass Effect. But you take it back to that time, and it was the forefront of innovation. And it was, I think, also the last console generation that really excited me. Like, I bought into the cell processor hype, and obviously that didn't come true. But as I said before, the PlayStation 3 did a lot. I mean, it was really an online media hub as much as it was a game player. Plus, you had the Blu-ray. That's another thing. Like, I was watching Blu-rays then, like the early Blu-rays. So it really ushered in the HD era and the online content era in a way that I don't think we give it credit for. We see it as this complex, super expensive quasi-failure. I mean, it picked up steam at the end, but it was a rewarding piece of hardware to own. And while it didn't fully live up to my expectations in the end, it was that last youthful burst of hype and hope, and that really kind of the last positive where I bought this PS3 and I was really pumped about what the future of gaming would be. And I don't feel that way anymore. Like PlayStation 4, Xbox One, the Wii U have not really lived up to their promise for me. Actually, strangely, the Xbox One has to a degree. I think its course correction has made it the system that fares best in an assessment of the current market. But I bought the PS4 and pumped as hell, and the thing is collecting dust. It's just there's nothing on that system that interests me. Plus, the fact that it doesn't work, it spits out discs at seemingly random times. So yeah, I really miss that time, and I think, as I said back in the first episode, I think we're poised to enter a second wave of nostalgia. That first wave kind of ended with the Dreamcast, and then everything after that is junk. But I think that maybe the stalwarts, the guys that grew up with Atari and Coleco, aren't going to follow the nostalgia there. But I think someone like me who grew up in the NES era and really came into my own in gaming in the 16-bit and 32-bit era, the mid-2000s, late 2000s, compared to that, were not as good. But in their own way, in that kind of mix of, the past and what would then become, our present of gaming, with the Call of Duty, with online infrastructure and stuff like that, it really was an exciting time. And it was also, the YouTube was coming into its own, and guys like, what was the Cinemassacre guy? What did he call the Angry Video Game Nerd? And he was doing his stuff, and then I think a year later, Classic Game Room and Johnny Millennium came on. Pete Dorr came on. All these YouTube guys, and of course back then it was, this exciting new medium, and kind of gaming was taking off in a way that founded everything that we have today. So. November 2007, an awesome month in gaming for me personally and for the industry. Well, I alluded to it at the beginning of the show, and now I'll talk about it. This is the last episode of the Retro Critical podcast, the last normal episode, and I'll get to a little bit more about what that means towards the end of this segment. But time to really talk about why that is, why I am pulling the plug on the show in its current form. It is basically just because I don't think anyone's actually listening to it. I think I'm delivering 3 hours of a monologue, which I know is hard to listen to. I try to break it up as best I can with the musical interludes, but it seems like with each upload, I get less and less views. I look at the kind of podcasting statistics, and they're just bad. I mean, there is no one listening to this show. And it's a shame. I think in these 13 episodes that I've done, I think I've had some unique takes and unique segments and topics, and I've enjoyed doing it. But, there is a cost to doing a podcast. There's a sort of financial outlay for the hosting, and I'm not seeing any indication that it's worth it. When I came on to YouTube, YouTube is free, so of course, if you're not getting any views on a particular video, it doesn't matter so much. But now that I'm paying for hosting, and I kind of just look at the fact that there is absolutely no traction for the show, beyond, of course, the core listeners, and some people who've been following me for a while, and I really do appreciate that. I'm not sure that I want to just continue paying money into the podcast and having absolutely no effect. But again, I don't regret doing it. It's part of a longer trend, and you may have noticed that it was about a month ago, 2 months ago, I took down a lot of my videos on YouTube. I took down all the videos in which I appeared on camera, and that was just because it was stupid. It was stupid to appear on camera with the hat and the glasses and all of that. So, I felt like while I enjoyed kind of the topics that I was presenting on, I feel like I wasn't an on-camera personality. And, I did 100 episodes or 99 episodes on YouTube, 99 videos on YouTube without appearing on camera. And then I figured, well, for the 100th one, people like to see a face or something. But for professional reasons, I didn't really want to just appear without the glasses and the hat. So I did the show that way for a while, but I was essentially doing podcasting kind of content. So yeah, once I started up the podcast, once I was getting in the process of releasing the book, I said, this is just silly. Let me just take this stuff down. So when I say this is not this is the last full episode, what I'm going to do, probably in December, is take some of the best episodes that I have done, and that won't appear on the channel, and create one kind of retrospective of Game Escape, in audio form, and post that, release that as a podcast, throw it up there on YouTube, just so that, because I think some of that stuff was worth listening to, and I don't want it to be down forever. But I think it represents a kind of decline for me in being engaged in retro gaming and gaming in general. I mean, you'll have noticed that the kind of tone of some of the stuff I'm presenting has become a little bit more, I don't want to say a little bit more critical, but just generally kind of negative. And I've reached, I've kind of reached a point where when you're producing something, when you're being creative, and this was not the first creative endeavor of my life, but it's been the first kind of video, sort of social media type of thing that I've done. You don't do it because you think you're going to hit it big. That's not the reason why I started this show. But you do it because you hope to engage with people. And I think I've reached a point now with the engagement and just with kind of having any impact whatsoever on the retro gaming landscape, that I've reached a point where I'm almost thinking it's not really worth my time to do this. I mean, if anything, the time that I used to put into videos and editing and stuff like that, I've gone back to just playing video games, and also writing the book. I stopped putting out videos and I sort of focused on that. And I think the book is also the kind of best statement and the most complete statement that I can make about retro gaming, and I don't know that I have much more to add. I mean, the book was, on the one hand, kind of a collection of some of the ideas that appeared on the podcast and on the channel, but also a kind of more intense and detailed exploration of those ideas. So I think that's my statement about retro gaming. Not the post-apocalyptic elements of that book per se, but sort of the kind of analysis and reflection that the main character goes through about his life in retro gaming. And honestly, after I wrote it, I found it actually very difficult to kind of go back to gaming. I feel like, I don't know, there was some break. There was some kind of, on the one hand, sort of cathartic element that I was able to kind of crystallize a lot of the thinking and a lot of my experience in the hobby into that book. And I just feel like I've had a hard time getting back into it. It's not to say that I haven't been playing games. I've been playing some modern games, but I don't know what I can say or contribute beyond that. And I also think that when I look at the kind of content that is popular out there right now, I'm not really sure that there is a place for me in this community, the place for the kind of analysis that I do. I think that I present it in a very long form way. I mean, if you read, I recently restructured my blog, and so I posted some articles on there about gaming and otherwise. But take the article that I wrote about Otaku no Video and its legacy. I'm really happy with that piece of writing. I think I touched on a really, I think, important theme of that movie and in that movie's, or that OVA's reception. And I think that it kind of says, in retrospect, it kind of says a lot about what consumer and enthusiast culture has become. And I think that I really captured that in that essay, but it's 11, 12, I don't know how many, maybe not 12,000, it might be like 8,000 words. It's a long piece of writing. It's an analytical piece of writing, and I'm not sure that anyone has ever read it except for one guy on Reddit. And of course, I posted a video about how much I hate Reddit, but anyway, there was this thing about talking about famous anime, and I kind of posted it on there, and one guy seemed to enjoy it. But, there's not a lot of people who are going to read that. There's not, I think these videos that I would do, 10 or 20 minutes, people aren't going to listen to that. Yeah, I didn't have the best production values, and some of them I scripted, some of them I didn't. It didn't seem to matter. I mean, I look at this podcast, and through all the hours that I've spoken on this podcast, I think I've touched on some really interesting things, ideas in and of themselves would potentially spark debate or discussion if they were kind of presented in a different way. And I don't have that ability to present things in a way that sells on YouTube. This is not a medium that is kind of caters to the stuff that I do. And also, as far as the podcast, I think it's an issue of discovery. I think I sound better. I think the podcast is kind of a better format for me. But it's, I mean, it's more convenient in a way because I can sit down one night and I can record something, and then I'll come back a couple days later and there's another story, and I'll record it again, and I'll talk about some retro stuff, and I'll stitch it all to get together and put it out there. But that whole editing process after I record still takes time. And, no matter what I write, or no matter what sort of podcasts or videos I put out, they're just not reaching anyone. I mean, I think, I don't know how the book is going to go, but I'm skeptical that anyone is actually going to read that, or if they do discover it, it's not going to be through me or this podcast or the Twitter and stuff like that. It's funny with Twitter. I tweet a lot of different things, and some of it's critical and stuff like that. But I discover that you can click on, see the analytics of how many people are seeing your tweet, and if I respond to someone famous, or famous from the retro community on YouTube, even if it's just like, hey, cool, good to hear from you, or interesting idea, I get more views on that than I do on anything that I tweet myself. So I think we've reached kind of a critical mass, and everyone's producing content, and everyone has got stuff out there. And there are a couple of big names in YouTube who are going to command the bulk of the attention. And I just don't think that there is a place for me. I don't think there's really a place for the podcast necessarily to get discovered. I think the book, although it's I think original, I don't know of any other book that kind of deals with social criticism and retro gaming, and kind of the meaning and almost philosophy behind retro gaming in the way that my book does. Nonetheless, I don't think many people are going to see it or read it. So I've approached this time, and I don't want to make it sound like this is kind of a cost-benefit sort of analysis, but ultimately you reach a time where, the reach or the impact of what you say, or your ability to actually get discovered is actually so low, at least in my case, that it's almost not even worth the time it takes to, speak these words or produce these videos. And when I first started, that didn't bother me. I kind of was just enjoying doing it. But maybe I'm getting older, or, there's other responsibilities in life that are maybe creeping in, or maybe it was just a phase. But I kind of look at, if I throw up a YouTube video and it gets 40 views after 2-3 weeks and goes completely undiscovered, it's just, what's the point? Why did I take the, even if it's one of my videos, which, it only took a couple hours, if that, to put together. I mean, I can't take the time to dig out the capture equipment and, get the footage and edit it and do the voiceover and all of that. For 100 views, it's not worth it. And I think that there's also a decline in even the discussion or the responses to anything anymore. So, and I don't want to sound bitter about it. I am not bitter about it, but I'm a realist. And I think as someone who tries to pursue creative projects outside of my employment, which, I don't want to say that I'm not creative at work, but, to pursue your own creative projects, it's, if you're not getting the fulfillment from it, there's no point in doing it. I mean, before I did YouTube, a friend of mine and I actually we had written a pilot for a television show, and it was kind of like autobiographical about his life and stuff like that. And so we were consumed by, writing all of these episodes, and it didn't go anywhere, but that whole process was fun. And, I would do, then after that I moved on to doing some writing, sort of cultural criticism, political criticism, and I enjoyed doing that. And then I moved into games, and it was great, and it was wonderful for those, first 2 years here on YouTube. And I really do appreciate the 1,700 subscribers that I have. It was a struggle to get discovered, and I thank those people, for sticking with me. But I just, I think in the end, you look at how your videos are doing, you look at how the podcast is doing, and you just kind of look at the community. And I don't think there's just not a place for me in it. In a way, I kind of feel, I don't know, I feel like for a while there, I was trying to fit in, especially at the beginning. I kind of had this almost, I hate to say dirty feeling, but, this feeling of kind of like when you're in high school and you're trying to fit in with the in crowd, and you sort of follow the trends and stuff like that. And, I've never been good at that, and that wasn't me. And then as I kind of developed the channel and produced some more original content and came out with some more original ideas and takes on things, I was actually enjoying that more. But in the course of doing that, I was just getting kind of less and less exposure. I don't think it's really what people wanted. I look back and I did those, my PlayStation 2 collection videos, and they each have, I don't know how many views, but when I looked at it, the first one had, 400 views, 500 views, and the second, third, or like I did the unboxings of that controller, that Vulix controller, and those got a couple thousand views. And I just, I don't want to be one of those guys in front of the camera, showing off the games. But I did it to a degree because I wanted a record of everything that I had, and I figured putting it out on YouTube was a good way to get a record. But beyond that, unboxing. What the fuck is the point of an unboxing video? That was a unique item, but I felt like, God, why am I doing this? I'm just doing another, these videos are silly. So that's why I moved into, I'm like the only guy talking about Herbert Marcuse's The One-Dimensional Man in the context of Twitch streaming. So I thought a unique connection, but in the end, no one's going to care about that. So it's just time for me to stop. It's time for me to pull back and, just do other things with my time, even if it's just finding a way back into retro gaming and kind of rekindling a lot of just what I enjoyed about it. It's like I just haven't had the time to actually play the games. And I want to get back to that, and hopefully this kind of break that the book has given me, will fade, and I'll kind of get back to that. But this is not the end. Like I said, I feel like there's always an issue that you want to express, and I think there's an inherent need that a lot of us have these days to actually have a voice and to have yourself be heard. So, like the other night when I came out and I was pissed off about Reddit and just kind of the insanity that Reddit has become, it was cathartic to sort of put together that little video. It was essentially a podcast segment that didn't make it onto the podcast. And so I could see myself doing that. Like, this is not a retirement. This is not, me sort of saying, well, fuck gaming, I'm never coming back. No, that's not it. It's just that the kind of regularity and sort of, putting something out there on a regular basis, I don't want to do that. But with the setup I have now and kind of the microphones right by the computer and the programs a click away, instead of doing these segments that go on for a while and stitching it all together into one podcast that comes out at the end of the month. I could see myself putting a couple of these different segments just out there as little individual videos. And if you like the style and you like, what I've done on the podcast, you can just watch it that way, download it, put it on your MP3 player or whatever. But this, again, I can't justify paying for hosting for a show that no one's listening to, and I can no longer justify a consistent commitment of time to YouTube and to the channel when I just don't think that there's an immediate audience for that. But again, it's not. I can't say that it's the end. It's the end because there is a desire to speak, and for better or for worse, I've crafted at least an outlet here between this and the Twitter and my blog, and I want to do. I kind of want to get back into more writing, and to kind of more of the. I think again I'm better in print, and writing the book. Kind of rekindled that. So, if you care, I'll put some stuff out there. And, I wrote the thing about Reddit before I recorded it. So, you could see something like that. I'll put a blog out there about gaming, and then I'll sort of come on and do a podcasting segment. But, yeah, if you've listened since the first episode and you've gone through, I don't know how many hours it's probably over 24 hours of audio, and you've listened to me drone on, as it were, from segment to segment, and you got something out of it, and whether you agreed or disagreed with me, the podcast kind of, piqued your interest in something, or, you engage with some of the ideas. I appreciate it. I appreciate you sticking with me. But, yeah, I'm going to call it a Retro Critical podcast. Normal episodes are done, but not really the last episode, because again, I will be putting out kind of best of Game Escape episode in December. We'll end it on the 14th episode, and that'll be a long one, and it'll be, if you missed a lot of the videos, or if you're new to the podcast and you haven't seen some of the videos, check that out. It'll be, I think, a good podcast, and like I said, those videos were segments anyway, so you'll get a nice beefy podcast, and I'll come on, I'll do a little intro and stuff like that as well, so there's some original stuff in there. But yeah, it's been fun. Thanks.